It's a very exciting time to be a wrestling fan.
If you're in the business of making money, it would behoove you to be a safe and inclusive space.
Whether you agree with what someone is saying has nothing to do with his right to say it.
It's rabbit season. Duck season. Rabbit season. Duck season. Rabbit season. Duck season. Rabbit season. Rabbit season. Duck season. Rabbit season. I say it's duck season, and I say fire.
What's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrificed my time so you don't have to. To be fair, and I wish I kind of, and you know, it was pretty decent, healthy engagement last night, but it was more so just to let you guys know that I was aware of what was going on in the news in regards to Mercedes, and you can at this point call it somewhat controversial, only because I don't think anyone, I can tell you straight up, I did not expect AEW to pull in anything less than $1 million. Honest to God, I didn't think they were going to pull anything less than $1 million, but they did. They did. In fact, that was one of their on the lower end scale. It's not their lowest viewership number, but it's definitely on the lower end scale of their overall viewership numbers in the past couple of months now, man. Really, overall, when you think about it, if you're going to say the past couple of months, because this is the lowest period I can ever remember AEW being in from a viewership standpoint. And there are people, because I gave that caveat last night that apparently people are missing. There are people who are talking about Sasha Banks, and they're like, oh, there's a good shot. Well, I said there's a good shot that she did over 1 million views, right? And she left, and it just dipped off. And lo and behold, that happens to be the case. She absolutely did 1 million viewers, and then it dipped off. One little small problem, though, and I know some of the Mercedes Sasha Banks fans, they're not gonna want to hear this, and I got proof that I'm gonna show on screen right now in a little bit, but apparently Sasha Banks isn't the draw that you think she might be. Here, check this out. I'll show it to you guys. So this article reads, with Mercedes Monet's arrival at AEW Dynamite Big Business, widely anticipated by fans who follow the dirt sheets, Tony Khan chose not to announce Monet for the show officially, instead choosing an Easter egg style of promotion that mirrored CM Punk's return to wrestling on the first Dance debut episode of AEW Rampage in 2021. Monet's debut also opened the show, just like Punk's did, but while these tactics may have helped fill TD Garden with a raucous crowd in Monet's hometown of Boston, they also resulted in what can only be seen as a ratings disappointment. According to Wrestlenomics, Big Business averaged a total viewership of 801,000 this week, up from last week's number by just 3%, while the coveted 18 to 49 demographic stayed entirely flat with no movement from last week's 0.27. While the overall numbers seem to display a story of near total stagnation, the quarter hours tell a somewhat different tale. Big Business best quarter hour was its best, typical of Dynamite, which benefits from a strong lead-in from The Big Bang Theory. But this week, 1 million viewers were tuned in for Monet's show opening appearance and promo, a full 70,000 more than watched in the first quarter hour last week. After Monet's debut, however, viewership cratered, losing more than 100,000 viewers between the first quarter hour and the second quarter hour, and dropping to 737,000 by quarter hour number 4. Will Ospreay's promo in the subsequent Jay White versus Darby Allin picked things up slightly, but Big Business lost another 100,000 viewers between the Chris Jericho Hook Tag match and the quarter hour 7. The main event singles match between Riho and Willow Nightingale in quarter hour 8, which only drew 627,000 viewers. Due to a Nielsen error, viewership information on the overrun was not available and wasn't factored into the total average. Monet did end up returning to the show during the overrun, inserting herself into the storyline between Nightingale and Julia Hart. The tanking of the ratings following her initial segment has led some to suggest that fans didn't realize she was coming back at the end of the episode. So, there's a bunch of things we're going to talk about, but there's one more thing I want to show you guys also. Check this out. We're going to take it little by little, and we're going to actually zoom out so you guys can see the entire map for yourselves, right? Now, this is coming from Wrestlenomics, okay? Wrestlenomics, I got the link down in the description box below if you guys want to follow him. Does a great job with these breakdowns as far as letting you know what segment did what number, so you can get a complete contextualized, in my opinion, a complete contextualized viewpoint rather than just, generalizing everything, because, that's what we do as wrestling fans, right? So check this out. This is coming from the first hour. You have Mercedes Monet live promo, Samoa Joe backstage promo, which it kind of looks like that and this is between 8 to 8:15, and you can see how it's drastically declining, right? So it starts off with her at 1 million viewers. You have that, right? That's the context. And it starts to gradually go down as you go into the 15-minute point right here, with Samoa Joe versus Warlow, which did around 899,000 viewers, right? And then it drastically kept going down, and you can see it right here, all the segments that link up with it. You can see it as it's going down right here with Swerve Strickland, post-match stuff and the 6-man tag match, leading into the next, the conclusion for the 6-man tag match, 737. It picks up a little bit with Will Ospreay, so that is kind of indicative of maybe his drawing power, at the very least for these wrestling fans in particular, right? And then you can see right here as it starts to get up a little tiny bit more with the Jay White and Darby Allin stuff. Not anything that's completely, drastic, but it is still notable just because it did rise when those guys were on versus it fell when, Kazuchika Okada and his team were around. Just saying. And then you get around towards the end of the show where you get around the Gates of Agony and Hook and Jericho. And honestly, it just peters off at that point. And you can kind of see it petering off a little tiny bit also when you start to get into the whole, the beatdown stuff with Darby Allin. At least that's what it looks like from the hours are considering, right? But it did just considerably drop off, like off a goddamn cliff once you got to the Gates of Agony. And then it just didn't recover at all once you got to the Willow Nightingale and Riho stuff. So I think that's a pretty indicative, if you ask me, of, you don't have anybody at this moment from a character standpoint who, I won't even say that. I think it's even worse than that. I think it's more so the fact that you just have Mercedes Monet as the drawing factor of the show, but once she got off, it pretty much petered out, if you ask me. But let's go more in deep into this. Let's talk about this. Let's go talk more about this if you don't mind. So now that we have a better understanding of what happened here, can we actually go out of our way to say whether or not Mercedes Monet is not a draw? Well, like I said last night, because I figured that was the case, I literally said what happened here, not verbatim in the sense that I were able to map out everything that happened falling off, but I was able to at least suggest proper depiction of what I felt happened as far as Mercedes Monet most likely getting around 1 million viewers, and then it just dropped off a cliff. And I also said that, okay, well, the only reason I could see it, averaging out to 801,000 is if everybody else got around 700 or 600,000 or something along the lines of that viewers, right? And look what happened. That's exactly what fucking happened. And it brings into a multitude of problems, but more so, let's talk about the small things first. As I touched on yesterday, everybody has to pull their own weight as far as whether or not you're a draw or you're not a draw, or you're somebody who the fans want to see, or you have some type of act that people care for. I guess we can look at someone like the Gates of Agony, and you can't really put all that on them, right? You can't put all that on Hook if you want to, even though I guess when he was successful, people were like, oh, he's going to be this big well, apparently not, right? Jericho is the guy who's most likely leading that segment because he's the bigger name, and you see what happened. And then you put two girls who have no business at all even being on Dynamite, let alone the main event of Dynamite, main eventing your show, and your whole crush is pretty much saying, well, we're going to have Mercedes go out there and save the segment. Well, she didn't, and that just has more to do with the formatting. I feel like if they would have done a better job, and it's well, I feel like we would have got a better number if we would have just kicked off the show like this. Not necessarily. This is what I mean when I say you have a very, very strong lead in, and not just from the sense of just trying to have match after match after match after match after match. Because the thing is, if you would have just started off the show big, like a big pull apart brawl, something along the lines that to capture the audience's attention, and then you have that going throughout the night, and then you got to the main event, if you would have not held, I'm not saying you would have held everybody, but it's a good chance maybe you even would have grew, because people would have been intrigued with what the hell's going on, kicking off the show, and then you would have led directly into the Mercedes Monet stuff that could have main evented the entire show. But once you kick it off, all you're essentially telling the people who are watching Dynamite is, okay, but once you watch this, you don't have to watch the show anymore, right? And then look what happens. But then it comes right back to the whole Mercedes Monet stuff, because I think that's what people want to talk about right now, is whether or not she's a draw overall. Well, again, it depends how you look at it. Because even though she kicked off the show at 1 million viewers, right? That right there is indicative of the fact that she hit her peak already. Don't you guys believe that? Unless you do something otherwise, she hit her peak already. The interest in Mercedes Monet, judging by the chart and seeing how everything decreased afterwards, the interest in Mercedes Monet was at 1 million viewers. I guarantee you next week there's a good shot that all those millions of fans who came to watch Sasha Banks debut are not going to be there. Not to mention, and I know they talked about this already, but the Big Bang Theory, I think, plays a huge part in all of this, and I think everybody is understanding this, and going off the article also saying that it had a huge lead in. Now, to be fair, I couldn't find anything as far as numbers or what the Big Bang Theory did prior to AEW business coming on. I can't tell you. I don't even know if Big Bang Theory was even on before. If they're saying that it was on, I guess obviously there's no need to try to be contrarian about it. It was on. So you can't really say whether or not the lead-in from that did not influence Mercedes getting 1 million viewers. Obviously, there's a good shot that it did influence it. That's why Mercedes got the initial 1 million viewers, right? So, what would have happened if Big Bang Theory did lead it in? Let's just say some boring-ass movie came on, and then that was what led into AEW Dynamite, right? Would it have still got 1 million viewers? Let's say that it was a movie that did around 152,000 views. Is that a strong lead-in for AEW Dynamite? What would have Sasha done then at that point? So yeah, I think judging by all of that and then coming to a conclusion, even though you want to kind of, I don't know, I guess kind of, I don't want to say take out of context, because I feel like people are keeping it in context. It's just a bunch of variables that I don't think people are considering when talking about the situation. When you take all the variables into consideration, I guess Sasha Banks, she's not really a draw. Even if it were at the 1 million point, you got to still consider that somewhat of a disappointment, considering that this is Dynamite, right? Considering that overall, you would think that with all this promotion for big business, someone that's coming from WWE who has been seen on television for almost 2 years now, as far as wrestling or in a wrestling capacity, you would think that a number for Dynamite, I don't know, call me crazy because you're building it up. You threw everything against the wall. Kazuchika Okada, Will Ospreay, Sasha Banks. I didn't build them up. The AEW faithful built them up. So I would have thought with all that build up for the past couple of weeks now, really months, if you're talking about big business, there's a good shot that it probably should have done a little bit better. Even if you were to take out of context the Big Bang Theory stuff, I was thinking maybe more like 1.2 million, right? Right? Or people are going to probably be like, or is someone going to say, well, Devontae, that's a little bit too high for Dynamite. I mean, it's still cable television, right? And what are you saying? If it's too high for Dynamite, are you admitting that Mercedes Monet is not a draw? Is 1.2 million too hard for Queen over here to get? That's what you're telling me, essentially, right? That it's hard for her to get that number. Well, goddamn, I thought she was rocking Austin. That's what she said. What? Didn't she say that she was bigger than John Cena back in 2021? Remember that? All those tweets that she was posting? I mean, she's the one with the big head, right? I'm just saying, if that was the whole point, if she was that big of a draw, I would have thought 1.2 million would have been suffice. That would have been it. But you know what? 1 million viewers was something that I was expecting. And even then, it didn't really play a factor into the overall crux of the show. So after this right here, you can probably go right back to knowing that Sasha's going to probably get around maybe 900,000 something viewers next week. And then it's going to go lower and lower and lower until we get to a point where we get around this portion next month, and she's going to fit in like a glove with everybody else. Because I said it once, and I'll say it again. Tony Khan ruins careers. Tony Khan ruins legacies. It's not just about the wrestling. It's not just about the character in regards to what you're seeing at the moment. It's episodic television. It's having something displayed right in front of your face that's interesting, that's fascinating, that you can sink your teeth into, and you have a reason to want to come back next week to see what happened because of what happened this week. If you can't hook in the fans in that manner, you lose everything. It's really not that hard of a concept. And it's not to say things such as draws and characters, it's not to say them, for an example, coming from WWE isn't something that is satisfactory as far as drawing. But why do you think it's satisfactory because of drawing with these guys coming from WWE? They had to do something, otherwise you wouldn't have signed them for them to be popping this hard for this, or you wouldn't have signed them for the bonus of trying to get a pop for ratings this week. And you do this all the time, you know what I mean? Why did you sign Sasha Banks, huh? Why'd you sign her? Like I said, you signed her most likely because you knew you were going to get a pop in the ratings. Not overall because, hey, she's another name, because if that was the case, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing to your other talents. You signed her. I don't think you even cared much for the fantasy booking aspect of it because of how much of a mark he is for Japanese wrestling, which I guess Mercedes Monet is Japanese, but she's not to the degree of what fucking Tony Khan is looking for, trust me. You did everything in your power to sign her to pop a number. And the reason why she popped the number is because she got over in WWE because of her character work and the stories that involved her character work. That's all you need to do. It's really not that hard of a concept, and he keeps fucking this up and is staring him dead in the face. You need to be controversial. Not controversial for the sake of being controversial, but controversial. You need to have elements that people want to see in order to tune into your show. There's just so many things that are just so goddamn obvious that if you just watch a TV show, not multiple TV shows, a TV show, you get the answer right there. But what do I know? In the end of the day, I guess I'm just a mark, right? But hopefully this clears up the air. People can stop running their mouths about, generally speaking, Mercedes Monet, she didn't draw anything whatsoever. Nah, she got the biggest drawing number that night, but that doesn't excuse the fact that Big Bang Theory is most likely responsible for her barely tipping over the million point. It doesn't take away from the fact that if that's her best, what's going to happen going out these next couple of weeks? And more importantly, what's going to be her worst? And it doesn't take away from the fact that this show overall was a complete disappointment. Not just from a numerical standpoint, looking at what happened with the viewership and the ratings. That was a complete disaster in its own right. But also just the quality of a show. Because because you can probably look at something like this, because there are some shows that draw low numbers, but it's a really, really dope ass show. And maybe, just maybe, people may tune in next week because of all the hubbub about this week's show. But nah, this show sucked. And then the ratings sucked on top of it. So I wouldn't expect much coming out of it going into next week. So now you have pretty much Mercedes peak. And at this point, it only goes downhill from here. Which brings me to the conclusion, overall, factually speaking, going over everything we talked about in this video, links are down in the description box below. Mercedes Monet is not a draw. With that being said, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. This is what happens when you have the WWE machine behind you, and you get a big head over yourself, thinking that you're more than what you are. Just saying, always remember, you are no bigger than the brand. You yourself, don't get it twisted, you yourself, you did everything in your power to get you over. But always remember, you may be going to work to go work, but you got there because of your car. Deuces, P. Ice.